folks. Welcome back to Pirkei, Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. It's always a joy to be with Rabbi Coffman. He's such a fun fellow. More than that, he's a Torah scholar, and we just appreciate him sharing with us the ethics of the Fathers. You can't go wrong with ethics. It's always a joy. Rabbi, you're live on the stage here, sir. How are you today? Good to see you.
Great. You made a little bit of a faux pas. The faux pas was they can't go wrong with ethics, right?
No.
Who wants to hear ethics, right? Someone told me a few weeks ago, what are you telling me there's right and wrong, right? Who are you to say there's right and wrong? I go, you're right. I'm nobody to say there's right and wrong. The Torah says it's right or wrong, right? So the Torah's anti-pig. The Torah's anti, all these things. I'm just playing with you. But, when it comes to ethics, right, people will say, you really think you got it right. You really think and you really think you can speak? No, right? I jump on the shoulders of much greater people than me. I'm just good at embellishing that. My Rabbi would say it was learning about, Motzi Shemra. What's Motzi Shemra is someone who speaks badly against someone else, defamation. And he was saying how, he's learning it and how difficult it was in different places that the Talmud brings out and this and that. So I looked at him, I go, what's so difficult? I do it all the time.
Oh my gosh.
So I'll say things, I said, what do you mean? I said, I speak against you all the time. I said, it's very easy. He's like, all right, I won't disturb you anymore, right? So ethics, if you hold that, that we live in, God forbid, a moral relative time, then ethics change, right? So ethics has to be universal, right? In other words, when I was
a baseline,
doing some videos on Tanakh Talk about proof of God, right? We did I used some esoteric, proofs, philosophical proofs of when is it, tell me 100% of the time when it's forbidden to kill, right? So I gave about 9 different examples and knocked every single one off because there was some relative aspect to it. The only time you're going to say it's forbidden 100% of the time, right? Again, depending on what the circumstances are, is going to be one reason. And that reason is God said so, right? That's it. You like it, you don't like it, right? So, people will say, euthanasia. Why can't I pull the plug on someone? The people, this person's suffering, right? So they'll say, well, I'm doing a great thing for that person. Yeah, we hold that's murder. We hold 100% that's murder. So, ethics, unless you're coming from the right source, right? Ethics can be relative. If ethics are relative, that means it changes. That means if it changes, it's not absolute. Right? So the only thing that we have that's absolute, obviously is Torah. And that's what, that's what we're doing here. So we're still in the first Mishnah, second chapter. That was just, ways of being funny in introduction, right? But the Mishnah says, which we got to a little bit last week, and that is that what aspect? That all Torah study, not joined with work, will cease in the end and lead to sin. Right? So we sort of touched on that a little bit. That's why I said earlier, I texted you earlier saying, this is going to be a pretty hot show because, this is going to be a major issue. How can people sit and learn all day? Right? At least people, let's say, people are married, right? And we'll see how the Jewish concept, a little bit of marriage works, how the woman's going to work. The husband's going to sit and learn for, X amount of time. You can say it's not fair. He's got no obligation to support his wife. Well, that's true. That's 100% true. But, if she's willing to self-sacrifice, let him learn, etc. for however long. So the house looks different, right? There's no question. If someone's learning full time, can't learn as much, right? Sorry, if someone is working full time, can't learn as much. The house is different, right? It's a different, it's a different thing altogether.
Oh, no.
So here, what do we start out with, or what do we sort of end with, and we got into all kinds of other topics, which is normally what we do, which we're good at. and then the miracle is you have to watch the beginning of every show. You have to watch the end. Forget about the middle; it doesn't really matter. But when we get on 3 or 4 different topics, and we see how the circle comes back, that's nothing other than either I'm lucky, every single time we do this, or God's feeding me information. I'll be like Joe Biden at a presidential debate, and I'll have something in my ear, somebody talking to me, so I can give over this information, right? But obviously, see, I got nothing in this ear. I got nothing in this ear. It's all coming from right up here, what God's giving me. So no one's going to say, hey, you're looking at a teleprompter. Someone's feeding you the information. We're not going to make fun of Biden today, right? We'll do that another time. So, say, the election's over. Come on. All right, good. We're not going to speak about politics. Point here is, how is what we're doing, right? That study is good together with an occupation, right? And it says that sin will be forgotten. Now, let's just take the first part, right? Really, I want to speak of what it means sin is forgotten, right? But at the beginning, everybody, and we'll single out the modern Orthodox, because the modern Orthodox, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them believe, obviously, working, right, is God-given obligation, right? In other words, the husband has to support the wife. True. That's exactly what the marriage document says, right? But according to them, again, not all of them, but they will say that, yeah, Torah study is important, but it's also, I could be a doctor rabbi or a rabbi doctor, right? My Rabbi once told me a story that he had a disagreement when he was in South Africa. He used to go to South Africa for like 6 months out of the year, and it was in Israel for 6 months out of the year. Started a whole community there many, many years ago, and he told me he had a disagreement with doctors. So he said 25 years later, this is already 40 years later, but he said 25 years. He said for 25 years they've been arguing, and he said after 25 years they agreed that I'm right. Right? So he said for that they call me Dr. Sternbuch, right? My Rebbe's name is Sternbuch, right? Ramosha Sternbuch, right? So he should be well. So he said on that, he said, for that reason, they call me Dr. Sternbuch. So I said, Rabbi Doctor? And he goes, no, there's the doctor, there's the rabbi, right? Never the two shall meet. So I was like, Rabbi Doctor? He goes, no, I got the point. I understood the point. Right? So what's my point over here? A person can be learning for rabbinic ordination, not saying it's a bad thing, and becoming a lawyer at the same time. In other words, if you were to ask them what's more important, is Torah scholarship more important than, let's say, learning to be a lawyer? Right? So they're going to have to say no. Torah's more important. But if you would ask their parents, right? I just want to flush this out for a second. If you would ask their parents, and you would ask them, if you had a choice, your son could be a doctor, lawyer, or an accountant, or your son could be a rabbi, what would you choose? 98% would say rabbi, doctor, lawyer. Terrible profession to be a rabbi. Why? Because that's what gives prominence, right? That's, if you ask somebody, right, first time you meet them, right? We met. What do we ask? Hey, what do you do? What do you do for a living?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, more often than
not. So, everyone knows I just scam off of non-Jews because that's what I'm good at. So I should get a real job. Okay, right? But that's the first thing that people ask, right? Now, are you defined by what you do? Certainly not, right? You want to say, I'm a property manager. That defines who you are? Certainly doesn't. You're a 6'7" white guy that can, jump up a little bit and dunk the ball. Very good. How that's going to help you in life, not exactly sure. But I digress here. The point is that does not define us. What defines us is how we act. What defines us is how much Torah we put into our lives. What does not define us is if I'm a doctor or I'm a lawyer or, everything else. That's just a way to make money. But why in the world? Now I'm going to ask the question because I'm going to pick on them because I was part of that community a long time ago. And I'm going to pick on some of them and say, why is that the most important thing? My son, the doctor, the lawyer, the accountant, he's got to make a living. I agree. Being a rabbi, you're going to have more than one job, for sure, right? You're not going to make ends meet, most likely, right? Just doing one thing. Good. But, okay, so if you're talking about making money, and I understand it's an important thing, so why is that more important than being a rabbi? Why is that more important than learning Torah? They'll say, it's not more important, right? Some of them will say it's not more important than learning Torah. But but the bottom line is you got to make money. So they'll say, okay, he'll be kovei itim l'Torah, find time to learn, an hour here, an hour there, right? He'll figure out exactly whatever, but put your full time into learning. Come on. We believe, let's go back to the first Mishnah, right? About a year ago, almost, right? To go back to the first Mishnah of the first chapter. What does the world stand on? Avoida, Torah, right? Torah avoided it out of order. Just see if you're paying attention. And Gimilus Chasadim, right? Torah, the world stands on Torah. If people weren't learning Torah, what happens? The world goes back, as you mentioned to me before, because you're going to speak tomorrow. You're going to speak tomorrow on, about Noah. You go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. Come on, you know that by heart. The world was what? Chaos. The back of that Led Zeppelin album, you know what I'm talking about, right? Chaos. That's what the world was. Right now, if people aren't sitting and learning, at all different hours during the day, what happens? The world doesn't have a kiyum. The world can't be established. The world goes back to that chaos. Now, everyone would agree that was bad, except the fact you wouldn't have to listen to me. We wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have to listen to you either. You also wouldn't be here, right? But the point is, so they're going to claim this Mishnah, but you need both. You need both, right? But again, Torah is what's upholding the world, right? There's a different, the Torah tells me in two different places that when the Levites started their service, again, it's all introduction. See how far we're going to get, right? The Torah tells me, when does the Levites start working in the temple? At the age of 25, right? The Torah then tells me somewhere else, what time does he start working? How old? 30. So the discrepancy, it's 25 or 30, right? So comes along Rashi, right? Father of all commentaries, comes along Rashi and says, you give him 5 years. You give someone 5 years of learning full time in order to see if they have potential. If they don't see after 5 years, they're really learning, they're absorbing, whatever, then they're never going to see it. Right? So now what will some people say? Come on, my kid learned for 18 years. He went to yeshiva, right? But if you're going to cut him off, if you're going to cut him off and say, okay, now get serious. Now he's got to go to university where he might have a grueling schedule, 2 mornings and 2 afternoons a week, right? Forget about Zoom, right? Maybe 2 mornings, 2 afternoons a week. That's what he's going to have. You're going to say, no, my kid learned Torah already. But if he's only 18, how long has he been learning Talmud for? 5 years, 6 years, right? Starts learning about 10, 7 years. He already learned. He's already been learning, right? But what's the argument against that? That's when he's now starting, right? In other words, it took him 3, 4, 5 years just to get the lingo, just to learn how to think. That's what his rabbis are teaching him, how to think, right? How to make, how to make a diuk, how to make an inference, what the Talmud says, what the commentaries are arguing about, because they could say the exact same thing, except they may leave out a word here. Or a word there. I'll give an example. I just saw this post right before we came on, and that when the Torah tells me in Sodom that God comes down and he's going to destroy Sodom, right? And it's the verse says that the Lord's going to destroy Sodom and the Lord's going to bring this fire brimstone from heaven, right? So someone asked the question. Now, what's the obvious question? It mentions God twice. That's the obvious question. God's going to bring the fire and brimstone, and God's going to bring it from heaven. Could be it's talking about 2 different gods. So someone says, well, I'm a Christian. I only believe in one God. Okay, there's one, and one is 3, as the Beatles would say, right? Okay, we hold that's idolatry, right? Imagine if I had caffeine, you'd all be dead, right? So 1 and 1 is 3. Someone says, but come on, we don't believe in idolatry. We don't want to believe in idolatry. But it says there's more than one God over here. Now, if you look at the verse itself, what's the verse telling you? Right? Simple explanation. Forget commentators. Forget anything else. God is going to bring the fire and brimstone. What is it showing? God's all powerful. Right? But where's he bringing it from? He could bring it from the earth, couldn't he? He could just take fire and go boom. Right? Bring it out by the flood. Again, we're going to speak about the flood. Right? All these giants said, oh, the flood's never going to affect me. Right? We're not going to die. So what did God do? He made the water sprout out from all over, from underneath, and the water was piping hot. It was 150 billion degrees. So these giants say, oh, I'm going to stick my pinky. I'm going to stick my pinky in these holes. It's never going to happen. Yeah, stick your pinky in a hole with water coming up. That's 1 billion degrees. What's going to happen? You are going to fry and you're going to melt. And that's exactly what happened to them. Right? So according to this verse, I just, I'll pick on this, pick on this person over here, because why? Because they all look like two gods. So why are they saying God's going to come from heaven? Must be they're two different gods. Well, where's the fire supposed to come from? What would I have thought? Logic, right? I'm not bringing any commentator. I'm just saying simple logic. We don't believe in more than one God. So why did it say that? None of the commentators, if I remember correctly, are saying, oh, it's two gods, right? If the Torah tells me, let us make God in our image, that's a question, right? Going to Sodom, God says, let us see what's going on. What do you mean, we? What is it, like the English plural, we? God's all of a sudden being English? Come on. He's saying to his heavenly court, he's showing his humility. Does God have to show humility? No. He certainly doesn't. Does he have to ask his heavenly court? Read the book Derech Hashem. I recommend it. Unbelievable book. I also have a course on it, right? We'll plug that later. Point is, God doesn't have to ask anybody. Doesn't have to ask me. Doesn't have to ask you. Doesn't have to ask anybody who's listening. Nope. Right? But what do the commentaries tell us? Commentaries tell us God's showing humility. God, and a person can make a mistake. Because say, oh, look, there's more than one God. So what does God say? Okay, let him make a mistake. I don't have to change the Torah because I'm worried about X, Y, or Z. Whoever it is, they're going to make a mistake. I'm not worried about that. Let them make a mistake. It's their choice. They have free will. If they want to see the truth, I'll help them. If they don't want to see the truth, right, Talmud says, I'll let them go. Because otherwise, we wouldn't have free choice. So therefore, if a person wants to make a mistake, right, they can say, oh, look, this is what the verse says. But that's not what it says. Right? That's pretty obvious. It's not what it says. Right? It's showing me where it's coming from. Because, again, where could I thought the fire could come from? Anywhere. It doesn't have to come from the heavens. It could burst out on the land. It could burst out from anywhere. Mm-hmm. Right? That would be simple explanation. But to tell me God said he's going to bring it, and then he's going to bring it from heaven, that doesn't tell me any which way that there's more than one God. How does that show that? No. Just because it mentions the word God twice? There's no evidence. There's zero evidence. Anyway, I digress. The point I wanted to make is that the unorthodox crowd, they'll say, yeah, Torah learning's important. It's extremely important. And they'll quote this Mishnah. And they'll say, but you need an occupation. Right? Otherwise, it's going to lead to sin. Okay, or we'll make sin forgotten. We'll see what this means. But they're going to say you need both. Now, in everyday life, you're going to say, how can a person learn all day? They're not working. How are they going to make ends meet? Right? People survive. Some better, some worse. But, they're willing to take on themselves tremendous self-sacrifice because they believe Torah scholarship is the ultimate. It is the most important thing. Now, you're only talking about 0.25%, if that, people over the age of 25 who are sitting learning full time. And that's even a joke, but I'm not even going to go there. But the point is that to say that, they should be doing something for the world. They have to be working. That's heresy. Why is that heresy? Because you're saying that's more important than learning Torah. Now, they're going to say, I'm not saying that. They're going to say you need a combination. Now, let's say a woman for however many years is willing to unbelievably self-sacrifice to let her husband learn. Right? Again, in the end, he's going to have to work at some point. He's going to have to do something. Right? At some point. Right? But who's to say that's wrong? If she takes it on herself, we're not forcing her. If she says, listen, I can't do it, you have to get a job, okay? Then he's got to figure out how to make ends meet, right? He's got an obligation to fulfill the marriage document. But if she's on board, and there are a lot of women like that today on board, why is that a bad thing? Why is that a bad thing? You can say, he's skirting his responsibility. They're both in agreement. Right, but the Mishnah says you need both. Okay, right? Well, we'll see why you may need both, but it's not the end to end all things, right? That a person has to understand, because if a person says getting a job is more important than learning Torah, right? In this context, right, then that's heresy. Because if the husband says, yeah, I'll get a job eventually, this is what my wife's willing to do, does this apply? Is this going to apply? It's not going to apply, right? It should not apply. But they, some of them, again, not all of them, right? But some of them take it and say, no, you got to be more well-rounded. You have to have your mind open till your brains fall on the floor. It's what you learn at university, all these things. And university's corrupt, tremendously corrupt. There's a lot of heresy there. I took a course because I had taken, a few semesters of a social science. I'm still not scientifically inclined, right? But I took a course in the history and development of science. What is the history and development of science?
Right.
Another vernacular term for evolution, right? So the professor gets up there the first day and he says, when you go to the zoo and you see a monkey, you see a chimpanzee, you see a gorilla, says you're looking at your cousin right in the face. So I was like, I don't know who's in your family. That's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know who's in your family, but I don't look like a chimp. I mean, maybe other people do. I don't know, right? But there are perspectives, many perspectives that a person is going to learn and is going to be exposed to that are 100% go against what the Torah says, right? There's this famous story. I'll get to your question in a second. I'm on a roll here. There's a famous story with the Baal Tanya, right? The first Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote the Sefer the Tanya, the book the Tanya, and he had a student that wanted to go to university. So the Baal Tanya told him, he said, you got to be very careful. He says, you go to university and you're going to learn all these, heretical things. You can become a heretic, etc. So what does the student tell him? He says, Rebbe, he said, no offense. He says, I've been learning by you for many years. Didn't make me truly righteous. Didn't make me into a tzaddik, right? So he said, if I go there, Nishkan Russia, I'm not going to become someone who's evil, right? So the Baal Tanya says, you're making a big mistake. He says, you came, to learn by me. What do you think? Becoming righteous is easy? It's something you have to work at, something you have to strive at. He said, if a person touches a dead body, right, or a dead animal, that makes them impure by touch. You go to university, you can become impure like that. I hope you can see that, right? Like that. He said, you want to be righteous? You got to work like a dog. Because it's not easy being on a high spiritual level and working on spirituality and working on ethics. It's a very hard thing to do. Oh, you want to go in the other direction? Mr. S, the evil inclination, going to have a field day. It's going to, you're not going to be prepared. He's going to hit you with a whole bunch of things. Your resolve goes down. It's over, right? What did a person think? A person goes to university, goes to secular schools, has contact with non-Jews. You say, Christina, I'm really sorry. I really like you, but, my religion says I can't marry you. And she looks like, I don't understand, but you don't do anything really that's Jewish. It's like, no, but, my Judaism is really important to me. And, and if God forbid, I'd have a choice. I'd have to sacrifice my life, give up Judaism or die. My Judaism is very important to me. But you eat bacon, you eat clams, you eat all these other things. What in the world is going to keep a person? No, it's something I just believe. It's not something you just believe, right? It has to be based on Torah. It has to be based on doing something. Right. Well, what's going to happen? What's this person's resolve going to be? When he's looking at this woman, he says, I'd really, I admire you at this, but marriage is never going to go. She's going to say you're a fruitcake, you're a fraud, right? That's going to stop him? Never. Right? And vice versa. If it's a woman, why is that going to stop her? It doesn't. Person can say their Judaism their Judaism is important, maybe not as important as me, right? I'll give you an example. I know, because I know no one in my family is going to watch this. My family has a family Hanukkah party. Been like, this year I think will be like the 80th year.
Wow.
Right. So, so it's a big thing. Family gets together, you light the menorah, hopefully it's on the right day. Hopefully it's on Hanukkah, right? You light the menorah and whatever. And, as people would say, wow, it's an unbelievable tradition. But the vast majority of people that are there, that are at this, Hanukkah party in my family, they're all non-Jews. Majority, right? Probably I shouldn't say the majority. It's probably close. Right? It's probably close to more than half. Right? So that being the case, to say, okay, it's a family tradition. At least there are some Jews there. But you don't understand what Hanukkah is. Hanukkah is about the defilement of the Beis Hamikdash, the defilement of the temple. They found a crucible of oil that wasn't defiled. It's about going against the Greek world. We live in a Greek world, right? Even though, what's left of the Greeks today, a few pillars here and there, some architecture. Hey, they gave us the aqueducts. You imagine what the roads were like before the aqueducts, right? Reference Life of Brian, right? Oh, the roads were terrible. Imagine what it used to be like, and education and the roads and this. So we live in a Greek world, right? Now, the fact that we're part of a Greek world means we have no choice. We're part of this. Education, entertainment, all these things, right? We live in this Greek world. Now, what do the rabbis call the Greek world? What do they call the Greeks? They call them darkness. Why do they call them darkness? It's the greatest enlightenment in the history of man, what the Greeks brought to the world. But it's all heresy. It's all about worship of the body. It's all about intermarriage. It's all about, going to the gymnasium, naked. Again, all these different things which go against what God wants. So now let's go back. You want me to say a family Hanukkah party for 80 years, and all these people are intermarried, and there are non-Jews running all over the place, right? They're running all over the place. You didn't understand what Hanukkah is. It's the opposite extreme over here. Now, what's the person going to say? Why can't you just leave well enough alone? Why can't you just say it's a good thing? Why should I say it's a good thing? That's exactly what Judaism does not want. That's exactly how Judaism is going to get destroyed, right? But if they're going to say, but so what you're saying is I'm not Jewish. I didn't say that, right? If you intermarry, it's a problem. Maybe in many ways you're considered like a non-Jew. If you don't keep Shabbos, it's a problem, right? It's a major problem. There are different things a person can do to lose their status of being a Jew. But you want to exemplify that? What are they saying? They say, I want to have a connection to Judaism. That's what they're saying. So they want me to say, okay, so live and let live. They're having their connection. They're doing whatever. Why can't you just, why do you have to, I'm not even going to say anything's wrong with it because no one's going to listen, right? But even so, at the end of the day, can I even say that's a good thing? No, you just move on to the next topic. Because they're going to say, what, you don't think I'm Jewish? I didn't say you're not Jewish unless you intermarry or other things, right? I'm not making that claim. What, you want me to say it's a good thing. That is the destruction of Judaism. That's exactly what it is. So if you have a 5th grade Jewish education and you don't understand what Hanukkah is, what do the lights mean? Don't the lights mean near mitzvah v'Torah, or near a candle is compared to a mitzvah? Torah is compared to light. When you go against what God wants, there's no light. You can light as many candles as you want. It's irrelevant. Right? But you're missing the bigger picture. If you miss the bigger picture, then okay, then I can also miss the bigger picture and say, yeah, what a great thing. What a beautiful thing. But what they're saying is, I want to have a connection. I want to have some level of connection. Maybe not as much as you, but I still want to have that connection. Okay, but that connection is heresy. That connection is taking Judaism and flattening like a pancake. Right? So the question is how far we take these things. Right? We're going to say you need to make a living. You need an occupation. That's true. That is definitely true. What would happen if let's say someone inherited a lot of money and they got good investments. They're making enough money. Their wife doesn't even have to work. So does that mean I should be out there making more money? I had people tell me that when I had money. They said, well, you're always going to prepare for the future.
More.
You're
Never
right.
ends.
So I said, if someone's running my money the right way, and I'm making good enough money, and I can help other people. So I was damned if you do, damned if you don't. Oh, now that it was taken away. Oh, you should have done this. What do you call it? Backseat quarterback, right? Backseat quarterback. Oh, I could have done this.
Armchair quarterback.
Et cetera. Everyone's got an answer, right? But when you had it, you just inherited it. You got it this way. You can't have it both ways, right? You certainly can't have it both ways. So therefore, someone's doing good with their money, and they're sitting and learning. What are they telling you? What you're doing ain't worth spit. That's what they're telling you. They're telling you that, you can do this because you have money, right? If you didn't have money, you wouldn't be doing this. I said, still, even if I didn't have money, part of my day is going to be going to learning, right? Even if I don't have money, however much of that day, right? But they're going to say, but it doesn't say you need an occupation. So I'm going to throw a wrench out there. If I already have money, right? Forget an occupation. I got money, right? I earned money the old-fashioned way. I inherited it. Not that I earned it, right? If you know the commercial, you know what I'm talking about. Smith Barney, that's the reference. Regardless of that, what will these people tell you, right? What will these secular people tell you? You should have done something else. What you're doing has no value because I don't see the value in life. Okay, I could spend the next however long explaining it to you. What the bigger picture is. You want me to do it in 30 seconds? Not going to happen. Not even by William Hall. Not going to happen. You want me to do it in 20 minutes? Half an hour? I could probably synopsis it. Right? Give a few examples. They're not interested. Right? They're totally not interested. So they'll say, well, the onus is on you, but you're not listening. You're not interested in the other side. It doesn't have any relevance to my life. Okay, that's what you think, but that's not true. And I could show you how it does. But then if they look into it, what's the problem? I mentioned this before. They look into it, their life's a sham. If their life's a sham, they have to change. If they're intermarried, what are they going to do with their wife and kids? They're toast. Yeah, question.
I just wanted to back it up a little bit there. I had heard of a phenomenal rabbi back in, I can't remember his name, but it was back in the Depression in upstate New York, who saw the plight of his congregation, and he would walk 10 miles a day almost to a farm to pick tomatoes, and then he got a bushel of tomatoes as his wage in order to bring back to the congregation so his students had something to eat. But it was the dedication that was profound, and apparently he kept this going for a number of years after the Depression until the congregation, got right behind him and said, you need to stop that. But my question is, what about the young rabbis that are not married yet? Let's say, I know that it's a mitzvah that they get married, is it not? But I mean, the struggles that they must go through wanting to study all the time, just stay immersed in Torah.
When they're younger, that's what they're going to do, right? They'll go through what we call yeshiva katana, I guess middle school, right? From the time they are, let's say bar mitzvah till about 17. So let's say about the age of 13 to 17. Then they go to yeshiva gedola, which is, I guess we'll say it's more than high school, but that's probably the age of 17, 18, until they get married, right? Many of them are going to learn until they get married. So learning's they're whatever. They're going to be living in yeshiva. They don't have expenses. They're not going to have tons of expenses, right? That's not going to be an issue. The issue would be, at some point when they want to get married, right? Obviously, the issue would be, about proper thoughts and all that. So that's definitely a good reason to get people married younger, but, obviously not too young. Certainly in the ultra-Orthodox world, not considering the Hasidic world, the average age when people start to date about 21, 22. In the Hasidic world, it's a little bit younger than that by men. By women, it'll be like 19, 20, something like that. And people say, oh, they're too young, right? They're too young to get married. But this is what they're born and bred for, right? They've already taken care of their siblings when they're younger, whatever. So it's not like people today, they get married, they don't know how to cook. They may have a 200 IQ and they may be a CEO, but they can't do, any of the simpler tasks. Now you're going to say, well, is that what makes a person? Is that what makes a woman? I'm not saying 100%. What we're saying is that in the ultra Orthodox community, they are prepared. They will be prepared. So we'll speak about dating. We'll get there, right? But the idea is that there's a reason that dating in this way, right? 95%. I don't think it's much more than that. But even if you tell me it's a 10% divorce rate, which would be pretty bad in the Orthodox community, it may be that high. I don't know exactly the stats, right? But if it works 95%, let's say, or even 90% of the time, it's better than in the secular world. Secular world doesn't make sense to get married. Totally doesn't make sense, right? Because divorce is over 50%. Some places it's 60%. If you live together, it's over 70%, right? I heard Rabbi Miller, a blessed memory, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, right? And he says, how do you kill a great romance? How do you kill a great romance? Get married, right? That's how you kill a great romance, because, if you're milking the cow for free, no pun intended, why do you want to get married? Right? What's a piece of paper going to do? It's just going to make you more obligated, right? And then it's not going to be as fun, right? It's certainly not going to be as fun, right? But again, we're talking about, students that, learning Torah full time, they're younger. We're not going to get them married, especially if they're men, when they're 18. It's too young. I mean, in the Hasidic community, that might be the case, but, everywhere else, it's older than that. So they're going to be learning, 19, 20, 21, 22, start dating. And usually, all things being equal, they should get married about the age of 23, right? 23, 24, right? Or, somewhere around there. A woman get married 19, 20, all things, all things being equal. But again, they're not having the responsibility while they're learning at this point, support anybody. They're being supported by the parents, right? They're going to yeshiva. They're not, they're not being supported by, the parents are taking care of them, right? Or
there must
they
be
may
some
do a
out
few
there.
things. They may do a few things here, a few things there, maybe, make a little bit of, spending money, whatever. But, they're not out in the world working. That's not what that's not what their purpose is at that moment. The purpose at that moment is to be learning full time. That's the purpose. My Rabbi brings down the name of his Rabbi, Ramosha Schneider, of blessed memory. And Ramosha Schneider told the students, like, no such thing, going to work before you're married. No such thing, right? He says the whole purpose of being, of learning and being in the yeshiva is to make you into who you are, right? To know which direction you're going to go. Okay, who says I have to go to university anyway to make a living, right? That's a whole myth in and of itself. We'll speak about that as well. But we're talking about between the ages of, let's say, 18 and 23, right? 1822, 1823, that they'll be learning, more or less full time, unless, a person's really not, cut out for that. So if they're not cut out for that, okay, right? But you have to give them a chance. You got to give them a certain number of years to see if they see, if they see the fruit of their actions, if they see that they're successful, in learning. Some people have it, some people don't. It's not, it's not an easy thing. People say, oh, what you do is easy. You would never last. Most people would never last learning 8, 9, 10 hours a day, breaking your head and thinking, and this, your brain's tired, right? It makes you weaker. That's what we said before, right? That's what we're going to see in a second, right? I mean, this is all introduction, right? 40 minutes in, this is all introduction, right? But that's what it means. Learning Torah makes you weaker, right? It weakens the body. Unless you have the status of the Energizer Bunny, then okay, then you need to take cap naps here and there. You're not as tired. Okay, but for most people, learning Torah makes you tired, right? That's no question. Okay, that knocked off your first question. Yeah, second question.
Oh, no. I'm getting gray, just trying to learn myself. And I don't know, us here out in the 70 nations, we might be a little bit thicker than others, but I think you really punched it home about how the Greek world has, influenced in a negative light rather than just a positive light. And wow,
listen, we're living in a world where we're living in the Messianic era. No one disagrees that we're living in the Messianic era, and in the Messianic era, there's going to be there are a number of signs. One of them is chutzpah, absolute, just scoffing and mocking and making fun, right, of anything that is holy, anything that's related to Torah and anything else. And who else do they make fun of? Who do they poke fun at? None other than the rabbis, right? Who's the ones that get the least respect, right? Are the ones that are, breaking their heads, learning these old books, and certainly, not doing anything, God forbid, for the world. Person should be, writing a book on tax law, right? Or, writing about the Greeks in the, in the Second Temple period, or, I had to write I was in Israel for my junior year abroad, and I was a history major. So in order to, you had to take like a seminar. You had to take 2 seminars, and I got stuck since I was overseas. So the first seminar I took was, Greek history during the Peloponnesian War between like Athens and Sparta. I can't even tell you how exciting that was. But the second course I took was interesting. Was about the war in Vietnam. So that was actually kind of interesting. In a lot of different ways. But when you imagine if I would have written, if I would have decided to get a master's or a PhD, I wrote this 100-page paper, on the socioeconomic situation of Athens and Sparta, and what brought them to where they were and what happened to them, and all this. I guarantee you, I know plenty of people that have a ton of, all right, depends what I'm going to do with it in the end. But even if I was a professor, look what he's doing. He's a professor. He's a professor in university. He's teaching about Greek history. What a mind. What a mind. No, but really, sitting and learning 10 hours a day, mastering the Talmud, reaching out, what a loser. Why don't you do something real with this life? That's the way people look at it. Because writing a book on tax law, or, the Greek war, whatever, between Athens and Sparta, and all that's more serious, right? That's doing something for the world. I don't know exactly what, right? You're going to say, oh, so why are you making fun of it? Because people give it more respect than it deserves, right? Everyone knows what a BA is. An MA is just more of it, and a PhD is pilot higher and deeper. So when I was a history major, so the majority of my grade was a midterm and a final, and I write a 10-page paper, usually 10-page paper, 15-page paper. So after a while, you're writing papers, you know how to use information and just sling it. And just keep going on and on and on. Bring a few references here, a few references there, and that's it. I passed. I did relatively well, But what does that make a person?
Right.
Can I spit back in that information today? Not much of it, if any, right? But people give that much more respect, right? Imagine, my specialty was World War II. So imagine if I did a PhD, about the socioeconomic, situation between 1933 and 1940 of the Third Reich, right? And how they came to power and what they did, and all these different things. Now people would say, "Wow, you're just jealous. You don't have a PhD or an MA." You're right. I'm jealous. Okay, right? But in general, not true. But in general, if I wrote a PhD and I took the exam and I passed, I'm not saying it's not a lot of work. It's a ton of work involved in passing oral exams. I'm not belittling that. But people worship it. People say, oh, he's got a PhD. So if I wrote that paper, if I wrote that 100-page paper, you know what that shows? That shows I know one aspect of one subject, of that time period. So you're going to say, oh, he knows everything about World War II. Doesn't mean I know everything about World War II. I know one-tenth of one aspect. Doesn't mean anything. But the problem is people worship it. Oh, he's got a PhD. Can't argue with him. I was once given a class, a bunch of 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and I gave a history. I gave an example in history. Like, oh, I can't argue with the rabbi. He's got a degree from history from Columbia. I was like, ooh, he's got a degree. He's got a history degree from an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
Woo! I think you should start licking my bootstraps. No. So I said, if you tell me he knows all of Torah and he can quote, this and that by heart, oh, that's impressive, right? But to say, he knows, he's a history, big deal, right? That doesn't, in our world, it's all about scholarship in Torah. Secular knowledge doesn't mean anything, right? It certainly doesn't mean anything, and if a person's going to even bring in proof from the secular world, that's not, I wouldn't say, oh, look at him. Look what he did. Look how he tied the whole thing together. I listened to a video, unbelievable video from a Mendel Kessin, should be well. He speaks about a lot of deeper things, going on in the world. And he brought this whole thing down, but we're not going to get into politics about Trump and what's going on and, this whole recount and what he represents and whatever. It's like, it's like my wife was saying, like, it's like unbelievable where he comes up with these ideas. Very deep. It's very deep. So, okay, you're taking the Messianic era, you're taking very deep concepts and you're applying it to today. And you're seeing, okay, what does this guy represent? What is he doing? How did he get into power? Why is he falling out of power? Right? And all these things. And how does this work in the Messianic process? That's a whole different thing. Right? That's not say, oh, the secular world is the secular world that. No, you're piecing things together to understand what's going on right now. Now, even if I could use all this useless information that I have, right, in order to make points, right, at least that information should go somewhere in a positive way.
Sure.
Right? Say, some would say, why would you use that as an example? Because most people that I deal with are either non-Jews or Jews that don't know that much. So when I use an example from a TV show, from a movie, from a sporting event, from something, they'll get the message much easier. Because if I started talking, Kabbalistic interpretation, different things, which I'm not necessarily capable of doing, but if I would in a much deeper way, everyone's going to be lost, right? There'll be no point unless I explain it, what it means according to this world, right? So, okay, we're 50 minutes in. That was by way of introduction. Now, why is sin forgotten, right? Let's get to the Mishnah. Why does it say if I study, Torah studies good together with an occupation, because it makes sin forgotten? Now, we mentioned a little bit last week, and that is the Torah learning we mentioned weakens a person. That's what it does. Anyone who sat for 2 hours, either listening to a class, learning, trying to understand, it's taxing on the brain. That's what it is. And if a person hasn't slept a lot, you fall asleep like that because it's just hard, right? You got to use your brain. You can't read Torah like you're reading a history book, like you're reading the newspaper. You got to think, right? Just like this person brought up about, it says God twice about Sodom, right? Maybe they're two different gods. Think. Judaism is monotheism, absolute monotheism. That's what Abraham brought to the show. That's what Abraham brought to the world. Everyone else had their pocket God. Here's God, right? I use my phone here. Here's God, right? Bob, right? I'll call him Bob because I like Bob. It's the same name backwards and forwards, right? Here's Bob. Don't leave home without him. Everyone had their pocket God, and he showed there's a world of design. Now, obviously, maybe they don't have this knowledge, right? But if we believe in one God, and Abraham's the one who came on the scene and showing absolutely that there's one God through a world of design, how in the world could you say by Sodom there's more than one God? Right? How could you say God says, let us make man in our image? Who's we? Well, okay, Rashi asked the question. Others asked the question. It's a good question. If there's only one God. But you got to think. I just gave one possible answer 20 minutes ago or whatever about that one verse. Right? Without looking into the commentary. That'd be simple explanation. Right? And probably other explanations as well. So here, Torah learning makes a person weak. Physical work can break down, weaken the body. Now, says the Chovos Levavos, right? It says in Duties of the Heart and the Gate of Emunim Bitachon, we mention him a lot also. He says that how can a person make a living in this world? God's going to give you one or two options. Because he wants everyone to be successful. One option is he'll give you brains, right? He'll make you a Rhodes Scholar. He'll give you a 180 IQ, 200 IQ. And you'll figure out through marketing, through other things, you'll figure out how to make money. God has a different way. What if you don't have brains? Right? What if you have brawn? Right? Just, 6'7" white guy, right? Tall, whatever. Brawn. You got brawn, so you don't necessarily make money because of your brains. Maybe you will. Not saying not, but if you have the brawn, if a person only has brawn, he doesn't have brains, God's going to allow him to make money. He's going to allow you to make money either way. Because if you had brawn, you didn't have brains, or vice versa, you're stuck. How are you going to make money in this world? So therefore, a person can physically work, it's going to break down the body, right? Eventually. And through both the evil inclination. If you had the evil, now let's take in the evil inclination, that could destroy both of you, right? In other words, that could destroy the person who's learning Torah, because then he's going to get sucked in and people are going to say, what are you learning Torah? You should be writing a book on tax law. You should be thinking about Greek history, and all these different things. Why are you wasting your time? The evil inclination is very good. Get involved in politics, get involved in this, take you out of the base measures from learning, right? The evil inclination, take you away from physical work also, right? It can work both ways. Convince the person, not to do it. He's too tired. He's too this, any number of things. So when it comes to learning, we'll get back to learning here. When it comes to learning, a person's got to try and understand, what he's learning. He's got to try and understand, obviously, the text, what it's saying, why is it saying what it's saying? Why do the commentaries agree? Why do they disagree? How does the practical law come out? That's not exactly the same thing, right? As if they're arguing in different esoteric thing, different ideas, right? Which idea goes according to Jewish law, and does it differ? Is it broken down? Are there any changes? It's complicated, right? Not everything is necessarily so clear cut, right? So we can understand if a person's, we only maximize 3% of our brain, right? If we're only maximizing a very small percent of our brain, we could imagine that if we try and sit and learn for any length of time, it's hard, right? It's hard on the body. You got to get up. I mean, it doesn't mean it's certainly not healthy, you would say. Got to get up, got to walk around. One of my rabbis should be helped invent plastic bottles. I happen to be a genius in science also. And he said, even with the greatest minds that he worked with, he's talking about Jews and non-Jews, right? They couldn't sit for any length of time. They had to get up, they'd have a cup of coffee, maybe have a cigarette. They couldn't sit for hours on end trying to work out different things, right? I mentioned this last week, but, I want to reiterate why. Now, why was he able to do that? Because he was born and bred to do that. That's how he was taught. At a certain age, when you're already 14, 15, 16, you're already learning most of the day. You're taking classes also, right? You're being given classes, but most of the time you're learning with another student. You're learning with somebody else, right? That's not an easy thing to do, right? Just, sitting down, no exercise. Okay, you can have some tea, maybe you have something to eat in the middle, whatever, but it breaks you down because you're using your brain and you're going bananas because you're telling me the text says this. I think it says like this. I got this commentary tell me like this, and you're going back and forth. It's taxing, right? But obviously you want to stay on topic, because if you go off topic, right? We mentioned also that a person goes off topic, speaking about politics, sports, whatever, in the middle of learning. That is a pretty severe thing, because what you're telling me is God saying, you're telling me that doing that is more important than learning my Torah. And okay, you'll get credit for learning Torah. This part you're in trouble, right? Because now you're wasting time. So we mentioned that if a person's learning over time, it's going to make you tired, right? It's going to weaken the body. And imagine a person does that over 50 years, over 60 years. Makes you brighter, makes you smarter. It doesn't necessarily mean, the body's in great shape. You got to take care of the body also, right? To the best of our ability. But at the same time, that's what a person's doing. So it comes along the Medrash. The Medrash says that if you take a mixture and you add it with oil, right? Why do we say oil over here? Because oil is compared to Torah, right? Why is it compared to Torah? It's compared to oil. We know someone smells good, so to speak. It means in Torah terms, it means that they have a mixture of good deeds. They're doing good things, right? They have a proper, I'm not talking body odor here, they have a proper aroma of spirituality, right? Anyone who's ever been in the presence of a Torah scholar knows they look different. They have a certain aura, right? It's not something I can explain. I've seen it. I've definitely seen it by my Rabbi, by others. They have a certain aura because they've been working on themselves. The Medrash continues and says, talking about proper character traits, right? And striving for them, i.e. proper character traits, what do we say? Derech Eretz Kidma L'Torah. Derech Eretz, proper character traits, comes even before Torah, which means they're compared to good acts that we do, and that we should have tremendous upstanding upstanding character. Now, the problem is, what do you do if somebody, we mentioned this, somebody's learning, and let's say they have a tremendous amount of knowledge, and their character traits go out the window.
Yeah, you
right?
said that.
That's a serious problem.
Very much.
And I think you may or may not know what I may or may not reference, but there are people out there, that will say it's my way or the highway, right? Which in the ultra Orthodox world, you can have disagreements, even between great rabbis, but there's respect. There is respect. You have to show respect unless they're heretics. If they're heretics, I can take away their livelihood. I don't have to show respect. And that's what people make the mistake. And people think that what you're doing is speaking Lashon Hara. Now, I think people waste their time on doing this. I've mentioned this before also. And that there are people that should really spend, you want to spend time on social media warning people against other people. You shouldn't listen to them. Good, right? I would tell you to spend 10, 20 minutes max every day.
Right.
You want to bring the thing to the you want to bring this out to the masses and all that. Very good. Very, very idealistic. Sit and learn. That's what you have to do. It's a waste of time. Total waste of time. So, but we have to know who to listen to, who not to listen to, right? So if someone's been learning many years, let them do it, right? Or only do it a certain amount of time, because if you're doing it for longer than you should, which is probably the case, and you don't have the requisite knowledge anyway, your obligation is to sit and learn as much as you can, right? So now, the last 28 years been part of the ultra Orthodox community. I've never seen such a thing. Never seen someone who, who's not only that, it's going to call out people. It's going to say, oh, this person doesn't know this, person's an idiot, and they'll make fun. They'll say, they're just afraid to confront me. They're afraid, who are you to call out anybody? Where's the respect, right? So I always say, if someone's going to make fun of me, I don't really care. Let them say what they want. If they're going to say, and this is where I'll take offense. And even if the person's a nobody, and that is that, you're going to come out and say, oh, this person has no credentials. That's when I'm going to dig in my claws, right? Because, I've been learning for 28 years for nothing, and, I absolutely, I don't have to prove it, right? What my credentials are. Everybody knows that, who my Rabbi is, what my credentials are, whatever. But someone who's coming out of nowhere, someone wants to make a name for themselves. What do they say? Why are you listening to him? He's a nobody, right? He's a nothing. Okay, even where it's coming from, right? People will say, you don't have to listen to them and they don't know anything. You're right, 100%. And probably most times I wouldn't, right? Except I have a number of pet peeves, right? And one of them is frauds. It's a major pet peeve. And that is that they say things, first of all, that are not true. They have zero credentials.
No virtue.
And they want to make a name. They want to make a name by going against people that have a name, right? Which I understand. I understand why. But I've worked very hard. I've had to crawl and scrape, and all these different things. And you're right. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time to mention these people by name. It's a waste of time. Make videos against them. Also true, right? But there's something out there that's called integrity, right? And a lot of people don't have it. And therefore, if you see they don't have integrity and they call people out on social media that, again, we're not talking about people that are heretics, right? They're calling out good people on social media and they're making fun. They say, oh, this person doesn't know how to learn. This person doesn't know anything, and they're putting it out there and you're arguing with them, right? Certainly, and if this person's quote unquote a rabbi, makes it look bad, makes it look like a desecration of God's name, all that. Person's not wasted, it's not worth the time, right? 100% is not worth the time. So therefore, the Talmud says that a rabbi you're going to learn under has to be somebody who's got impeccable character traits, right? It has to be like an angel, the Talmud says. Now, does that mean they're perfect? Doesn't mean they're perfect, right? There are many people could have a lot of knowledge, and still, have bad character traits. That doesn't make them perfect. One of my rabbis once told me, I think I mentioned this before also, that he learned by somebody that learned, that knew the Babylonian Talmud like the back of his hand, or the Jerusalem Talmud like the back of his hand, but the person's character traits were an absolute disaster. disaster, right? And it's the only thing I can say is that someone who has that kind of knowledge, it means they don't live what they learn, right? That's it. That's simple explanation of what it means. But one of my rabbis told me they couldn't learn by him. It lasted like a few weeks, not even, because the person was just, their character traits were horrific, right? So when we say derech eretz kidma l'Torah, it means that learning Torah is crucial, but you need proper, proper character development. You need proper midos, as we would call it. So how can it be that a person will see an Orthodox Jew drive like a maniac, or steal or cheat or other things, in business or whatever the case is? So it's a problem. We all have an evil inclination. The bigger the person's soul, the greater the evil inclination. That may be, that may all be true. Right? But even if they're doing terrible things, don't mix up Jews and Judaism. They may look like they're, Orthodox Jews, but we all have weaknesses. I don't think there's any question. But you have to live what you learn. You have to put it into action. You don't put it into action, what you're learning, it's just mental gymnastics, right? It doesn't mean anything. You could be like Aristotle. Aristotle, big brain, unbelievable philosopher, but Aristotle did all kinds of terrible things. So Aristotle said, it's Aristotle the philosopher, Aristotle does other things. We in Judaism don't say that. There's no compartmentalization. It's either what I'm doing is right or wrong, even though people don't want to hear that. It's either one way or the other. Right? So the Medrash says you need proper character traits, right? And proper character traits are compared to the good acts we do. Now, that would mean if I don't have proper character traits, or a person doesn't, what do I care if they give a lot of money to charity? What do I care if they've done certain mitzvahs or, other things? Doesn't really matter, right? It's totally irrelevant because your character traits overshadow that, right? In other words, it makes what you do look bad. A person can do one thing, and if they get caught doing it, it just takes everything else down with them. I've heard there's a story of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, Yochanan the high priest. He was high priest for 80 years. For 80 years. And he became a tzadduki. He became a heretic.
Ooh.
If he's a high priest, that means every year he goes into the Holy of Holies, right? On Yom Kippur. And if you weren't holding where you're supposed to, you died, right? Because later in the time of the Second Temple, you had people acquire the Kohen Gadol-ship, so to speak. They were high priests. They weren't worthy. So I don't know what the great excitement is that you're going to be a high priest for a year, 6 months or whatever, go in the Holy of Holies, you're dead. They all came out dead. That's what happened, right? So I don't know. It's just the thrill of being in the Holy of Holies.
On their ankle.
Whatever, the honor, whatever it is. But he came in and out 80 times. 80 times. Now, you're going to tell me how in the world could something like that, if they come out 80 times unscathed, how in the world could they stay? How can they become a heretic in the end? It's a hard question. The only answer is okay. They were on a high enough level that they were able to survive the going in the Holy of Holies. But the rest of the year or whatever it is, they didn't internalize the message. And eventually they become a heretic. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question because I was under the impression about when the Kohen Gadol went in to the Holy of Holies, there was a transition after the return from Babylon, and the Ark was no longer there, from my understanding, in the Holy of Holies. They replaced it with a stone. But before that, they definitively had to tie a cord on. Now, isn't this Rabbi Yochanan from after that? I just unclear. I just know what you're saying 100% as far as the integrity and the degree. But I thought that practice fell out of like people weren't passing away from going into the Holy of Holies when the Ark was removed from there.
I know, it could be. That could be, but even, I'm talking about where the Holy Ark wasn't removed, right? Where it's still there. It's before the temple's destroyed, right?
First
It's
temple.
before that. It's before that. So if you're talking before that and the ark's still there,
Right.
And they go in, how in the world is it coming out alive? Right? That's the question.
If he's blemished.
Everyone else is coming out dead, right? At a later time. Right? Even if it's a later time, doesn't matter. The fact is, whether the ark's there or not, right? It still has that status. If it still has that status, they ain't coming out alive, right? If they're not holding there, right? The same question again. I want to digress, but the same question by Korach. Like Korach goes against, Aaron Cohen goes against not being the high priest, and all that. And Korach came out of Egypt, saw the miracles in the desert, held the ark. Right? And not everyone held the ark, stayed alive. You had to be on a certain level. And he comes out against Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron. Makes no sense. Right? It absolutely makes no sense. Right? In other words, he wasn't stupid. Not by any stretch. Rashi says, others say, right? He wasn't stupid. But what does the Mishnah Pirkei Avos say, which we'll get to in the next millennium, right? And that is that jealousy, honor, desire can take a person out of this world. One explanation, we'll cut to the chase, is literally jealousy killed him. And he took 250 great people. The whole land swallowed them up. And if you go to a certain place in the desert, put your, every 30 days, put your ear to the ground. What do you hear? Moshe emes v'Torah so emes. You hear them coming up from hell, and they make this declaration: Moshe is true and his Torah is true. I mean, you have to be a certain place in the desert. That's what the Talmud tells us, right? So he understood what the truth was. But the evil inclination killed him. Jealousy destroyed him. I want to be the high priest. It's not fair. I'm just as good as Aaron. You gave it over to him. Protexia, whatever. I deserve it. But Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm not doing this because I want to do it. This is what God's telling me. Right? And if he would have come out against Moshe Rabbeinu himself, they would have killed him. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was the king. You don't come out against the king. Right? That also doesn't make sense. Right? Those stories in the desert, in the book of Numbers, the story of the spies, the story of Korach, the fact that they complain about, we want meat, and then the watermelon, where's that watermelon we had in Auschwitz, in Egypt, all this great stuff. What about the fish? We don't have any fish. Where's the fish? They're asking about fish. They want to go back to Auschwitz. They're living in the desert. Doesn't make sense. Literal. I mean, if you're looking at the Torah from a literal perspective, right? All the Karaites will be happy with me today. Well, what does that mean? This is the greatest generation in the history of man, and they're complaining about fish. Come on, a lot of sense it doesn't make. So you need upstanding character traits here. So says the Mishnah, will explain it like this also, that those who engage in learning Torah, now when a person's learning Torah, what do people in the secular world, even maybe non-Jews, think, right? Or secular Jews, what do they think? A person learns Torah. They think, oh, you know what? You just live in a cave. You're in an ashram going, you've been brainwashed. You're in a cult. Now, do you know what a cult is? Most people don't know what a cult is. You're deprived from sleep. You can never leave, right? I told this to someone a few weeks ago. I said, I have a choice. I can walk away anytime I want.
The
you want to tell me I'll be pressured, I'll be hounded. I walk away. Who's hounding me? Who's hounding? I can do whatever I want. No one's putting a gun to my head, right? A cult is I can never leave. I can't sleep. I have to drink the same Kool-Aid, right? Right? Drink the same Kool-Aid, etc. So over here, what do people think? Or what do some people think? That learning Torah, I should separate myself from the world, right? If anyone's ever read the Ramchal, Path of the Just, beginning the Path of the Just, he talks about aesthetics. And what does he say? He says there are people out there that think, I'm going to run around in the snow with a tank top and shorts, minus 20 Celsius, right? Below 0 Fahrenheit. You say, oh, look, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put myself in pain, and I'm going to show how holy I am. Comes along the famous Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, of blessed memory, says the Ramchal, I beg to differ. He says, you're not a holy individual. In my language, he goes, you're an idiot.
Oof.
That does not show holiness. He calls him a fool. I'll call you an idiot or a moron. Right? 615th commandment. Don't be a moron. Right? You're a fool. Why do you think if I'm running around in the snow, right, and it's below freezing, I'm putting my body in pain? Who says God wants that? Right? We have to get close to God without doing that.
Right.
Without living in that. The Christians look at the world. The Christians look at the world. This is terrible. This world is bad and it's evil, and all that. Maybe speak about the world being evil. Tomorrow when we hit Noah or whatever, right? But the world is evil. The world is bad and all that. So what do you have to do? So if you're a priest, you can't have any contact with women. Well, we know where that goes. You give someone the strongest urge and say, nope, you can't be part of it. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen. Person's going to live a celibate life, sure, right? So God says, I want you to be part of this world. You have to be part of this world. You have to sanctify the physical, right? Obviously, let's say when it comes to intimacy between a husband and wife, it has to be done at the right time, right? It's not looking at, oh, this is evil and this is bad and this is dirty. No, if it's used right, it's harnessed right, so it can be a beautiful thing. If not, okay, you're no different than an animal, right? Totally no different than an animal, right? But that means that we have to interact with the world, right? We have to be part of this world. We have to sanctify this world. Wouldn't it be very easy if a person, let's say, they decide to live in a cave, they decide to live far away from everyone. Everyone thinks, oh, look, this person's a righteous individual. Yeah, because he has no contact with anyone, right? Even if he's learning Torah at a high level, and all
Gilligan's
that.
Island. Yeah.
And, he might be at a high level. But being in a high level means you have to be in contact with others, right? In other words, being on my own without any contact, right? Okay, you have different evil inclinations, different things you have to work on, right? But you're not working on your interpersonal skills. And that's something that, we all have to work on. Certainly not, it's certainly not easy, right? So over here, it means you have to act in a proper way with good character traits. It's not about just saying, oh, I'm going to be a party into myself. I'm not going to have any interaction. Well, couldn't we all be righteous if that was the case? We could all be righteous, right? We're living, in Pago.
Isolated.
We're living in Yukon territory, freezing, right? In an igloo somewhere. We could all do that in theory, and be righteous individuals. That's not righteousness. God says righteousness means you live amongst the people, not just living on your own island. So comes on the Gemara. The Gemara says in Yuma, page 86, tells us that if a person lives in this world, i.e. you have contact with others, they see our good actions. They see we don't cut people off on the road. They see that, we stand in line. We don't cheat others, etc. They see we're pleasant and nice. Even if we don't dress like everybody else does, they're going to want to go in the same path, right? Therefore, a person learns Torah, has proper character traits. What's that going to do? That's going to draw close the Jewish people to keeping Torah mitzvahs. Because what do people say in general? Some people say, oh, you hold by the Torah. You go according to the antiquated laws. Yeah. There's someone else I know or I saw that they're an Orthodox Jew, and, they got caught for fraud. Or they got caught, doing something else or, whatever. So what's the answer? Okay, so he didn't do what he's supposed to do. What does that have to do with me? Right? I had someone, a friend of my father's, once told me, he said, when I was in Cheder, when I went to Jewish school, when I was a kid and the Rabbi hit me, when I was 5 years old, if that's what Judaism is, I don't want to have any part of it. So I said, but that's not what it is. Maybe, and the person kept saying the same thing over and over again. If that's what Torah is, if that's what Judaism is, I said, maybe Rabbi had a bad day. Maybe he had a bad day. I'm not, not saying what he did was right. We don't believe, whacking kids today. It doesn't work. Right? For sure it doesn't work. And not only that, they'll probably call the police on you. Right? But in general, that's not the case. So I heard Rabbi Wine should be well. Rabbi Wine once said, he said, imagine kids in fourth grade. right? He's in 4th grade, 5th grade. He has a bad teacher. Now, let's say, according to everyone, they agree this teacher's bad, right? And, this person got singled out and he got embarrassed and all this. This kid says, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with education. We don't need no education, right? No education,
Pink Floyd, yeah.
right? Pink Floyd, right? So we don't need education. So what does he say? I'm going out and getting a job. You ever see a 10-year-old say that? Except in India because they have no choice? Never. You'll never.
I don't know. I was.
But most people, unless there are other circumstances, I had during World War II like that, where, kids just had to go to work because there was no food, et cetera. Okay. But in general, you're not going to see that. What are they going to say? You had a bad teacher. You move on, right? You get therapy if you need therapy, because they could destroy you, right? Some people that, you had the head of yeshiva embarrass them in public, which obviously is wrong. And the person went sour. Person went off because, traumatic experience. Not saying, whatever reason, the head of yeshiva did it, obviously he's going to pay a price. But, the person also is going to pay a price because, okay, I understand it's a traumatic thing, right? But, we live in a Teflon generation today, right? Any little thing is, oh, you do this, I'm going to go off. I'm not going to be religious, but that's your choice. That's why parents today have to be like the Rock of Gibraltar. Kids could say that. Teenagers could say that. But
Nasty.
If they choose to do that, that's their choice. They'll pay a price. They'll definitely pay a price, right? But they need to be disciplined also. So even if a person had a bad experience, depending on what it is, does not give you the right to say, I'm out of here. It's an excuse. It's a definite excuse. And most things I think a person can get help for. Right. But you see, unfortunately, a lot of youth in the Orthodox community committing suicide because of molestation. That's the number one cause. And that leads them to drugs and to other things. That's probably the number one cause, as far as I know. And it's horrific. Something like that, some people never get over. It's just so traumatic that they never get over it. And let's say people don't substantiate their claims. Or they say, no, it never happened, and you're making it up, and, whatever. It can cause a lot of problems. And some people never get over it. Some people need, therapy their whole life, and that's what so people in the field, that's what they said. Most of the cases of kids committing suicide or doing drugs, they've been either molested somewhere along the line. That's number one cause. But, even with terrible things, that can happen. Okay. A person may have to go through therapy to get over it, but it doesn't give you the excuse to say, well, I'm chucking it because I had a bad teacher. I can tell you a number of things teachers said to me. I mean, that's only you.
People get lost, though.
Maybe, but, they could kill you. They could absolutely destroy you. And if a person doesn't have high self-esteem, which is very, very lacking today, right? If a person doesn't have self-esteem, they get knocked down, et cetera, and the teacher demolishes them, could scar them for life. If a person says, well, you're the middle child and you caused this and you caused that, and even if they do a little bit, what are they going to say? Oh, you think I do this? Now I'm going to show you how I do it. They're going to exemplify what they said, and they're going to act out so education's a hard thing today. Because even in the ultra-Orthodox world, you have to discipline. Kids need to be disciplined, but people are afraid because if you discipline too hard, and obviously the crime has to fit the punishment has to fit the crime. Because if you punish out of anger, it never works. Nope. The kid's not going to get the message, but They have to be disciplined. They absolutely have to be disciplined if they do something wrong. Now you have to have wisdom in how to do it, certainly. And you have to make clear what they're doing is wrong. But then you get, wow, this other person did it. This person, other people see contradictions. Right. Even if they have teachers and they say, they don't say this, but it's like, do as I say, not as I do. And that's another reason kids can go off, because they say it's no integrity. They do this and they do that. They do the other thing. Sad. And why do I have to do it? I saw it by somebody many years ago. His person's father was more modern. Let's say we picked on the modern Orthodox a little bit, but his father's more modern. And he'd be like, have his feet up. His kid comes home from yeshiva. He's watching TV, reading the paper. And he says, you got homework, you got to sit and learn. But he's sitting there like reading the paper and watching TV. So like, but you're not doing that. And he's like, I don't care. This is what you have to do. Like, what? The kid gets mixed messages, right? Where's the person going to learn? Where's the kid going to learn the most from? Even though he's in school, like, by us, I got a 9-year-old in school till 4:45.
Wow.
When he gets older, he gets a little bit older, he'll be in school till like 6:30, and then he gets older, it'll be later, right? But even if he's in school all day long, the essence of education does not come from school. It's reinforced, but the essence of education is by the parents. That's where it is. And if they see the contradiction with the parents, then what's going to happen is, the kid's going to get mixed messages. And if you give mixed messages, you'll mess that kid up in the process. Yeah, question.
Rabbi, I've heard it said that you just mentioned like the essence of education. I've heard it said often that there's an essence of education in delayed gratification, that if people understand by delaying a certain degree of gratification and studying rather than, it usually turns out for the better more often than not. And those that don't have the discipline that you're mentioning, they just tend to throw off all restraints and they don't want any delay in gratification. They just go after it right away. And we see this young people that go out to work here in the world, young people that go out to work at a young age, rather than say discipline themselves through high school, through college, or yeshiva, like you're mentioning.
Well, college is a different issue. I'm talking about high school. People who don't finish high school. College is a different issue because most of society has been brainwashed that you need a college education. That's not true today. That is definitely not true.
Delayed gratification. Is there not an essential element there that is a part of education?
Meaning what?
Well, meaning if a student realizes that by learning something and putting it off, there's always going to be more, greater, ad nauseum, without end, that one can learn. But to say, be like you mentioned earlier, a PhD, you actually have to go through this process bite by bite by bite.
A person
and
in
delay.
high school can say, listen, I can make more money doing this, that, and the other thing. What do I have to go through classes for that aren't going to help me? Right? Now, that may be true. But there's this idea that you don't want a 14-year-old kid out in business. He's too young. He's not mature. Right? I'm not saying he's got to take all these wasted classes that aren't going to do anything for him, but in the end, at least till the age of 18, they should be getting some level of education. Now, you tell me on the flip side, you don't necessarily need that in order to make money. That's true, right? There are people that, that left school early or basically finished high school, but they went out on their own and were successful. So you don't necessarily need that, but I think a person also needs a certain level of maturity also. You're not gonna go out at the age of 14 in general. Right? If you want to tell me going through classes at that age is not gonna help, I agree. Right? That's probably that's probably true. Right? But you still need certain, you still gotta learn like certain skills, at least social skills, some other things. Sure. While going through it. After, post high school, okay, that's a whole different ball of wax. Right. That's actually what we're going to get into. We're going to get into now. Now, the Jews of Germany, right? The Orthodox Jews in Germany, like to quote this Mishnah, right? And say that you need Torah with an occupation, right? So, you had Samson Raphael Hirsch, right? Was one of the main people, behind that. And they were ultra-Orthodox Jews that they made a mistake. And what was the mistake they made in interpreting this Mishnah? The mistake was that they looked at it as the Mishnah was giving you two opinions. One is about learning Torah. The other is about learning secular things. So therefore, what it means is they're not two separate things in and of themselves. Really, you got to make a combination. Now, why is that a mistake? Because the Mishnah here is telling you the majority of good character traits that exist in the world. That's what ethics of our fathers is. That's what you keep telling. That's what you keep telling at the beginning of every show. This is the ethics of the Father, how it's changed our lives, blah, blah, blah. It's all true. Hey, folks, right? That's all true, right? But the source comes from where? We just said the majority of the good character traits. We see bad character traits in Torah also. What to stay away from. That exist in the world as we know it. Right? Where does the source of good character traits come from? Gotta get someone new for Jeopardy. All you Alex Trebek fans out there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Sad. I grew up with him also. So, in either case, they say they claim one of the people that may replace him is LeVar Burton, and people are like, LeVar Burton, like, come on, you got to replace him with him, like. Anyway, we're not even going to go there. But where is the source? Where is the source? Would say Alex Trebek, what is the Torah? The source of good character traits, where does it come from? God's book. Comes from the Torah. Now, if you don't know God's Torah, if you don't know Torah in general, how are you going to have good character traits? What is going to give you good character traits? Right? People will say, I'm a good person, cardiac Jew. Right? What is your answer to that? Your answer is, I heard a great rabbi say this. You can even quote me. What is the answer? And that is, what's your definition? What's your definition of good? Right? And the obvious thing we could say, and that'll tick people off, which you don't necessarily want to do, and that we could say, well, you know who thought he was good? Stalin. Hitler. Yamach Shemoy. Right? May his name be blotted out. May he rot. Gaddafi. Arafat. Fill in the blank. These people thought they were good people. Killing Jews, not a bad thing. Right? So you're going to say, come on, that's extreme. That's why he wouldn't necessarily use this as an example. Right? Because they're going to get lost. They're going to get lost in what you just said. They're going to say, what? You comparing me to Hitler? You comparing me to Stalin? No. But what we're saying is that your definition has to be based on something. Right? We said at the very beginning, it cannot be relative. It cannot change over time. It has to be absolute. Right? Something that's proven through the course of time. When do I know 100% of the time it's forbidden to murder? How do I know that without getting to all the esoteric questions? Only because the Torah is absolute and it doesn't change. That's it. So therefore, if most people are ignoramuses, they don't know anything about Torah, how can they say I have good character traits? Right? Someone could sit there and belittle you and make fun of you, right? Speak Lashon Hara and all that. What are they going to tell you? What are you getting so upset about? Why are you so, why are you taking things to heart? I was only kidding. Is that what they say? Come on, you're taking things, I was only joking. Obviously, there's a little truth in every joke, right? But someone is not going to have any clue about what's good or bad. What's a good character trait? What's a bad character trait? Certainly what's good will make it easy. Certainly what's good if they don't know Torah. If they don't have a clue what Torah is. Why? Because both things go hand in hand. So these Jews of Germany, these ultra-Orthodox Jews, they wanted verification of what they're doing is right. So who do they go to ask this question? To none other than Rebbe Chanan Wasserman. Shem Yikam Damo. God should avenge his blood. Famous student of the Chofetz Chaim, famous head of the yeshiva in Baranovich. And they asked him the following question. They asked him about learning general studies in university as well as learning Torah. Right? So in other words, they can learn Torah during the day or at night or in the middle of the day, whatever, when they're not taking these other classes. And they can also take these other classes. Right? So they asked him, what about general studies? So we answered with the Balatanya. We told that story. Right? But they asked Rabbi Chanan. They asked Rabbi Chanan this question. And they wanted an answer. Can I go to university and learn Torah at the same time? So he answered, He answered that one language over here can be explained in different ways. How is that? Comes along the Mishnah. The Mishnah here says, learning Torah is good with an occupation. Now, how do we explain it? Good character traits, right? You need both. You need good character traits. It doesn't mean getting a job. That's not what it means. It means having proper character traits. But says the Mishnah, chapter 3, right? Again, we'll probably get there in about 3 years, right? Chapter 3, Mishnah 5. It says, whoever accepts upon themselves the yoke of Torah, meaning no secular studies. You're going to sit and learn. That's your job. God is going to take away the yoke of government, the yoke of responsibility. What does that mean? It means the yoke of making a living. So now, does that mean if I think I'm on that level and I'm going to sit and learn all day and God is going to take care of my needs? Now, that's what it means. That essentially is what it means. But not everyone can do that. Not everyone is on that level, right? I know somebody that they put minimal effort into making money and they have a tremendous amount of, faith and belief in God, and God takes care of them. Different things just, show up at their doorstep, things that they need, whatever, whatever it is. Okay, they're on that level. Most people are not on that level. So now, so seemingly, says Rabbi Chaim, we get a contradiction. In the Mishnah over here, it says you need Torah with an occupation. In a later Mishnah, again, in the next 5 years, we'll get there, it says only the yoke of Torah. If I have the yoke of Torah, I don't have to worry about making a living. God's going to take care of that. Well, you just told me that I need to make a living. If I need to make a living, God's not taking care of me, right? In that sense, right? But if I'm only learning, God's going to take care of me. Isn't that true? Contradiction. Now, if the rabbis over here meant a person's going to learn secular things, right? In other words, if the rabbis are telling us I can do both, 100% I can do both, then I'm still going to be exempt. Why? Because you don't see any greater mitzvah than the mitzvah of bris milah, of circumcision. And we see that, let's say a person that had a couple brothers, and they went through circumcision and they died. Right? God forbid they died. Comes along the third brother, the third son, and what do they do? Because the first two sons, they died. They died having this done to them. So in this case, what's the status? He's exempt. Doing circumcision on the third son, forbidden. You're not allowed to do it because there's a danger. Two sons already died. I have to put my kid in danger. So therefore, now we're going to make a little bit of a jump here, right? In a case where you're not allowed to do this, you are exempt. God's not going to say, oh, you should have done it. I'm going to hold it against you. Just like you didn't put on tefillin, phylacteries, whatever you want to call it, on this day or that day. You didn't do it, so you're going to pay a price. Over here, he's exempt. Amazing. He's exempt, not going to pay any price. Huge. Why? Yeah, he's not going to pay any price for one very simple reason. He'll die. He could potentially die. We don't put someone in danger like that. Now, somebody who goes to university where it's a place, and we understand, it's a place where many have gone sour, right? Certainly of heresy. I heard a great rabbi once say, I'll send my kids, to university. Let me see that they went in as moral, upright individuals and came out the same way. Yeah. If they come out the same way, okay, we'll talk. If not, why would I put them in such a situation? Right? As I heard Rabbi Victor Miller once say, I mentioned him before, he said that you can learn a lot of interesting subjects in university, like narcotics. You could take on booze and women, right? Or vice versa, right? So there's a lot of heresy. There's a lot of nivel peh. Nivel peh means people curse, and say all kinds of things that a person shouldn't listen to.
Nope.
It's such a dangerous place, says the Vilna Gaon, Rav Elijah Vilna, they should not learn there. Right? So comes along Rebbe Chanan over here and says that you want to try and do both. He's telling you that there's a tremendous danger. There's an unbelievable danger. The danger is heresy. Heresy is all over. Right? You can take any class, there'll be heresy there. Right? So you got to be unbelievably strong in order to overcome that. He's not even giving he's not even giving you that option. He's saying don't do it because it's going to let you go. It's going to cause you to go astray. So now someone's going to ask me the $1 million question, then what do I do? If I can't go to university, right? Even though I will claim, and I'll mention this for a second, I will claim, and others say the same thing, you don't need university today. What do you need it for? Certainly if you're going to study humanities, right? You're going to study the arts, ain't going to help you get a job, right? They'll say you need a college degree. It doesn't really mean a heck of a lot, right? There's some things you may need a college degree for, fine, but there are a lot of people making money without a college degree, right? I'll give one example. A friend of mine I knew growing up, went to college,
right?
Went to a business school, and he was going into his parents' business. What was his parents' business? They owned a few liquor stores. So I asked him in all the classes you took, in college, in university, how many of them helped you, to work in your parents' business? He said maybe a couple, maybe a couple. He was there for 4 years, right? And it was a business
classes,
school.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, it wasn't like liberal arts, and all that. It was a business school. That's what it was, an undergraduate business school, right? People are there majoring in business. You're gonna tell me, you took, let's say, 3 classes a semester. Let's say 3 classes. I'll be nice. 3 classes a semester. 2 semesters, that's 6 classes a year. Right? 6 classes a year. 6 classes a year, 4 years, right? 25 classes, maybe more. Whatever the case is, you're taking all these classes. You want to tell me 2? 2 out of 24? 1 out of 12? 10%? There goes $150,000. I mean, that was, a long time ago. You're talking like, 25 years ago. More. So, it's not the expense it is today. Right? But still, 10% of the class is all that money. Waste. Total waste. So there are plenty of people out there, made money, did well, no college degree. Now, somebody wanted to get, be an accountant. Do I have to have a degree? No. I have to know accounting. I have to learn it. You have to pass the exam. You want to be a graphic designer. I need a college degree. I don't need a college degree. There are things you may need a college degree. I'm not saying not. Right? But there are things, if I want to be an architect doesn't need a college degree. I'm not an engineer, right? You don't need a college degree for that, right? So in that case, it's a farce. But people will say, if I had a choice and I would take someone who doesn't have a college degree, I have 2 candidates. One has a college degree, one doesn't. Doesn't matter what the college degree is, right? The people will say, I'm going to take the one that's got the college degree. Now, what about somebody who's been learning yeshiva many years? Let's say decide, after they're married, they learn for a number of years after they're married. So let's say 24, the older. Let's say 27, 28. They decide, okay, I want to get a job. I want to go out there. Now, depending on what they're going to do, et cetera. So you might say, well, maybe they're at a disadvantage because they have to learn, certain things they may have to learn that they didn't learn before, et cetera. Okay. Maybe take a few courses here and there. Right. But in the end, if they've been learning how to analyze for the last 10, 15 years, college, a college degree means nothing. They'll flatten someone like a pancake because they know how to think. They were taught how to think. They were taught how to analyze, right? You're not necessarily given that in college. In college, a lot of times you're there to spit back information. There will be classes that you actually have to think. Right? You have to actually extrapolate from the material and, give over answers, etc. Right? Is that the vast majority? I don't think it's a vast majority. I think you're there to spit back information. See how much
Right.
information you cram in your head, right? Certainly that's the way in medicine. I don't think there's any question about that,
Oh,
right? You just have to memorize all these different things and reactions and this and know how things work. Okay. That's for sure. I'm not saying it's all, I don't want to be
definitely
misquoted. I
medicine.
don't want to say it's all certainly like that. What I do think though is most people are not taught how to think. They are definitely not taught how to think. People say, "Oh, as we mentioned before about living in an ashram and going to yeshiva, that's all about getting to the truth." Right? That's all about analyzing information. That's all you do. You analyze statements one against the other. And they may say the exact same thing. You might have commentaries say the exact same thing, except one adds or subtracts a few words from what someone else says. Now that could be significant, tremendously significant, and the ramifications could be unbelievable. So that being said, if they go out and quote unquote the real world, okay, they may be a little bit behind in some ways, but their mind should be razor sharp because of what they've been born and bred to do at this point. Right? So therefore, in one way they're behind, and in other ways they're miles ahead because they know how to think. They know how to think even a little bit out of the box. Right? In other words, they'll see something in front of them and say, okay, how can this be? Let's try and scrape away the layers and understand what in the world's going on, because it may not be what they're saying necessarily at face value. It may have tremendous ramifications. So somebody like that, I think, would be very good to be, on a team analyzing information, other things, because they've been doing that for so long. Now they're just doing it in a different context. Yeah, question.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that I have seen things swing in the other direction so far to the one end, where in my province they want you to have a degree even for a minimum wage job. It's ludicrous. I've seen the demand from the like you say, if two people, one's got a degree and the other one doesn't, odds are they're going to take the person with the degree. But I've seen things swing so far that, we want a degree so much. And the hardest thing is government certification. Everything's got to be certified. And it seems to be just, an endless stream of systems of control more than obvious
Remember what I always say, 1% think, 4% think they think, 95% rather die than think. Being certified, I do understand, right? I'm not, someone goes to special ed, some other things. They have to have some level of qualification, right? That is true. Sure. It doesn't necessarily mean I need a degree. One of my daughters in special ed, she got a certificate, right? She didn't have to get a degree, right? I have another daughter that opened up a school for girls. She doesn't have a degree. Absolutely doesn't have a degree. So that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. People give it a lot more prestige and power than it really has. I mean, if you're studying the liberal arts, right? Take someone like me. Yeah, you had to take 4 semesters of a social science, 4 semesters of a science, which I got away with other things. 4 semesters of a language. You had to take a number of semesters in your major, and all that. But again, a lot of it's liberal arts. So because I know a little bit about this and a little bit about that, how does that make me any better? So someone will say, wow, didn't you learn how to write better because you took English comp and, you read these other things? Yeah, I read Don Quixote, big whoop. I read the Odyssey, right? I took world literature. I read all kinds of things. I read Hemingway, Edgar Allan Poe, whatever. I took, world literature, took American literature. What does that make me? I'm more well-rounded. I remember half this stuff anyway, right? So who cares? What people want to see is you're responsible. You qualify for the job, right? That doesn't matter, what I got in statistics. Not necessarily. Not. It depends what it is. right? It depends what job, but in general, a lot of these things, I took music appreciation. I cannot listen to Mozart's Fifth, and ever. Why? Because I had an exam on it, and I had to listen to it over and over, all the ups and the downs and the this and the that, Gregorian chant and other. That makes me a better person, because I took art appreciation. Means nothing. Means absolutely zero. They're gonna say no, but that's part of the experience. That's part of getting the college degree. So what do they do in England? Right? Any of you English people out there, you love me. What do they do in England? They take A levels. The age of 16, 17. What are the A levels? You major in something, right? From a very young age. By the time you're 20, you're done. 20, 21, you're done because you focused at a young age, right? That makes more sense. Why do you think they're wasting your time taking all these stupid classes, right? But again, people say, oh, you're just jealous. It has nothing to do with being jealous or anything else. I don't have an MA or a PhD. It doesn't mean anything, right? It definitely doesn't mean anything. People are brainwashed that you should spend, you should be in debt for like $150,000, $200,000, pay it back over time in order to get this degree. For what? For what? I mean, I'll give an example. I'll poke fun because that's what I do, right? But I'll poke fun.
You're pretty good at it.
Yeah, someone got a PhD in what do you call it? In political conflict, right? Conflict resolution.
Jello making.
I don't know. No, something real, right? Somewhat real. And they're teaching this. They're teaching this in university. Conflict resolution, right? Now, if you look at the Middle East, none of these classes are going to help because obviously it's out there. But what does it sound like? What does conflict resolution sound like? A bunch of leftists.
Especially a PhD in it.
Yeah, right. It sounds like a bunch of leftists getting together saying, oh, we got to, keep our minds open, save this person, save this group, whatever, make peace. We'll start strumming my guitar. We'll start singing Kumbaya and all that. Person's a professor, right? Can't knock it. Okay. I'm not saying they're making big money or whatever, but, okay, that's what they get a PhD in. But if we have a Torah that guides us, probably major things in the Torah probably destroy so much of this because, at the beginning of the Torah, let's give one example. At the beginning of the Torah says, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim ve'es haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth. Right? Very simple. Right? So Rashi over there says, why in the world does Torah start with that? Why doesn't it start with Exodus chapter 12? Right? What's Exodus chapter 12? First mitzvah. What's first mitzvah? Rosh Chodesh. Right? The new month, which comes into the month of Kislev on Tuesday. Right? On Monday night, Tuesday. So why didn't the Torah start with a new month? Right? It comes along Rashi, and Rashi says, because the nation's going to have a claim. Because the nation's going to say, hey, why did you take the land away from us? God took the land away from us. You don't have a right to do that. You're going to come to the Jews and say, you don't have a right to take the land. What are the Jews going to say? Of course we have a right to take the land. Right? Why are we allowed to take the land? Because the Torah says God created the heaven and the earth. God giveth, God taketh away. Right? If we won by might, and it might be God's might, doesn't really matter. We won by might. So if we won by might, you take it away from us. Say, no, you got to understand. We were here first. So I'll ask you the question. When it comes to the land of Israel, without getting into politics, comes to the land of Israel, we fought defensive wars. No nation in the history of man, and you can look this up. You can Google it. Go to Rabbi Dr. Google. And Google, any nation ever give up land based on a defensive war? The answer is no. The only time you've ever seen a population exchange was in the 70s between Pakistan and India. Because of the fighting between them. That's it. If there was going to be an exchange, like some people may want to say, might doesn't make right. So then America has to give up California, New Mexico, and Texas and Arizona back to the Mexicans. They have to give back Florida to the Spanish. And they have to give all the land back they stole from the Indians, right? Not to mention compensate them the way they should. And now, is anyone going to ever say, let's get to the Indians, right? Is anyone ever going to say, we should give all the land back we stole? We call that manifest destiny, right? What's manifest destiny? Manifest destiny means I go from New York to California and I take everything within it, right? You don't like it, either be like us or die. So the Indians said, we're going to fight against you. You're taking our land. What did the settlers say? We have guns. Guns against bows and arrows. Who wins? Guns. That's what happened, right? So what did they do? They compensate the Indians after they killed all of them. So a lot of them are sniffing aerosol cans in, North and South Dakota. They gave them a bunch of casinos, right? And they say, okay, we're going to compensate you for all the land they stole. No one's going to say give it back, right? Not in a million years. Totally not. That's why these Black Lives Movement, people, they toppled some of the statues of, Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, anyone knows, he was big in Florida, killing millions of Indians, right? And sending them on their way, what they call the Trek of Tears, right? Sending them out of Florida on their way. And he murdered a lot of them, right? So they, we're so much more civilized, we're going to topple his statue, even though, one of the presidents way back when. So what happened to all that? What happened to all that? So, conflict resolution, it may sound like a nice idea, but obviously you're going to need compromise. What if someone's there for years on end? Someone attacked them, they repelled them, and now some court decides they really deserve the land. That's insane, right? Now, in other words, what could they do? And this happens all the time, and that is a nation takes other land, whatever it is, they don't give it back. In no way they give it back. The Jews, the Israelis gave back the Sinai for nothing after they being attacked by Egypt. They gave it back for nothing, right? Egypt's in charge trying to keep, Hamas and others, other terrorists out of there. Whatever, they gave it back for nothing. They've been trying to fight to give the land back, that we won during the, during the 6 Day War in the West Bank and all that. It's indefensible. Right, but again, if you look at history, I'm looking globally at world history. In world history, this has never happened in the history of man. Why in the world should that be placed on us? Doesn't make sense. And people will say the second biggest lie in the world. First biggest lie is Christianity. Second biggest, just in case you were curious, second biggest lie is the fact there was such a thing as a Palestinian people. That's the second biggest lie that everyone in academia and everyone swears by in all the newspapers and all the articles. And we stole their land. Right? But if you understand anything about Israeli history, remember, the late 1800s, Mark Twain came here. Right? Mr. Samuel Langhorne's Clemens. Right? In the vernacular. He came here. What did he see? Nothing. He saw everything plowed over. Just exactly what the prophets said. Now, if according to them, they've been here for centuries, for however long. These people, we're all the people. Remember before Israel became a state, who was in charge? The English. Who was in charge before the English? The Ottomans, right? The Turks. Did they talk about any entity, any national entity that did anything? Had their own buildings? They're a bunch of marauders, right? There was the Lebanese that were here. There was Jordanians that were here. Egyptians were here. Syrians were here. No mention of anyone else. But now you get all these people, right? So what do you do with them? So come on, the Israelis and the UN, they put them in camps, and the UN says they're going to have the status of refugees. So we're going to call them these new people, and the Israelis said, sure, not a problem. So who created this manifestation? We did. But again, I'm talking historical accuracy. And you're going to say, well, we have to give the land back to them. What do you mean? And they want the law of return. They want anyone who had to flee during the war. You know how many people that would be? You got people in Jordan, people in Syria. That would change the complexion of the state of Israel. No question. You're talking about millions of people. Right? So they left their land. What's supposed to be? You lose it. Look at all the land the Jews lost. In Europe, all over. Are they compensated? Okay, maybe they're compensated after the Holocaust, right? Some of them. But look at all the land, everything that was stolen from them. No one compensated them. They don't, even after the war, some people went back to their own homes and they were killed, or they were almost killed. The non-Jews took over their property. So what happened to fairness? No such thing when it comes to Jews, right? So why do I say this is one of the biggest lies ever? Because it is. Because if you look at history, if you look at the facts on the ground, when Rothschild was giving money to buy up property, say, oh, what about this entity? You can't take that property. They sold it. It was sold. You're going to say they didn't have the right to sell it? Who was there? Who was there at the time? Nobody. But the same lie over and over and over, it's been perpetuated. So, this president-elect comes, come what may. So, he's going to try and revive this peace process because there's no one to speak to, right? I always say I'm not going to get into politics. I'll just mention one thing, right? And that is, he's going to go back to that quote unquote status quo of giving land back, right? Stop building where they're building, where they claim it's the West Bank, which is most of the country, which is a good part of the country, et cetera. And that lie has been unbelievably perpetuated and everyone buys it. So there are organizations, trying to get that information out, trying to show how it's not true, with statistical facts. I mean, the easiest facts is, okay, the British were here. So who else was here? What other entity was here? Nobody. If nobody was here, then what claim do they have? They don't have a claim, right? But obviously, they claim that Israel's like apartheid, and there are plenty of Arabs that live here that'd be much happier and are much happier than living anywhere else, any other Arab country, because they're treated like dirt. It's like dictatorships in most places. So, they're between a rock and a hard place. I get it. But I'm just pointing out that, certainly on college campuses today, unbelievable amount of anti-Semitism, and perpetuating this lie. That's what the leftists do. You bring in a right-wing speaker, don't even let him speak.
Nope.
What happened to being open-minded?
Yep.
Right. That's the funny thing about this election. And that is if it was on the other shoe, it was the Democrats that there was fraud. They were burning down every single city in America. That's what they'd be doing. It's not fair. We can't declare anyone president. There's fraud. There's absolute fraud. We're going to prove it. Nobody would say boo. Not the networks. Nobody. Right? So everyone has an agenda. That's what we see. Right? What is history? History is his story. The way they want to perpetuate it. But it's amazing. It's amazing the people that have power, people that are visible, spewing garbage doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. So people are going to say, but you know what? They're not looking into what the truth is. They just pass on the lie. And what goes on here with the Arabs about, in their curriculum is all about killing Jews, and all that rhetoric hasn't been toned down. So, it's no wonder that they want to fight, against the Jewish people and all that, and, against Israel in general. And it makes sense because the hatred's being bred. Of course they can't say the truth. If they say the truth, they'll die.
Yeah.
That's why, I see sometimes, there are people that are, Arabs, either living here or in other places, they want to convert, but if they convert, they'll die. Because, the family will kill them unless they move.
That's a huge point, Rabbi.
Yeah.
That's a huge point. If they convert, they'll die. But we do have to wind it down here. Can you give us a quick summary? I want to thank you for today's lesson. It's been just awesome.
Yeah, I want to sum up all science in one thing. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. There was a science and Torah conference. And so one scientist comes up to a rabbi and he says, couldn't you sum up Torah by saying just be nice to everybody? So this rabbi looks at him and says, couldn't you sum up science by saying twinkle, twinkle, little star? Right? So the idea which we've been harping on, which, again, it's not the, I don't know if we're going to finish the Mishnah next week. We'll see. Probably come close. And that is that, when the Torah over here, when the Mishnah over here says that, you need Torah with, quote unquote, with an occupation, right? One thing we're going to speak about next week is exactly how to do that, right? In other words, even if a person has to learn an occupation, right? That's not the essence of who we are. That's what we spoke about at the beginning. That's not the essence of who we are. The essence of who we are is how much I learn, how much of a mensch I am, how much I work on character traits. Okay, it's an obligation to make a living, right? So you have to make the two match. It's not like we're living in an ashram. We have to live in that world because, you don't live in this world. What do you mean I don't live in this world? How do I not live in this world? Right? So that's what we have to do. But you have to know how to do it, right? And there are a lot of obstacles. There are a lot of obstacles in the way. I don't think there's any question that we have to, a person has to be very careful for, even if they are in the workforce, there is a way to do it. There is a proper way to do it. It doesn't mean there aren't pitfalls.
Right. Now, speaking
that,
of such,
that we'll speak about. Maybe
yes.
we'll hit a little bit more about, this contrast between, the secular world and Torah and how to make that, fit. But in general, they shouldn't fit. They're polar opposites in general. Right. But the idea is I have to sanctify the physical. That's what I have to do. And that's,
I
that
understand, Rabbi.
That on a regular basis is not an easy thing.
To speak of occupation, I actually have to do my monthly on-emergency call next week. Mm-hmm. So this sounds like something I really need to hear, but I may not be able to. I think we may have to put off next week as well.
Okay, so I have to do it in 2 weeks.
As part of a monthly duty. Now,
right.
That yoke of Torah, that yoke that you spoke of. I mean, I've enjoyed for a number of years just doing what I need to do, digging, studying, and trying to give Hashem, glory with my existence. It's only recently I've just gone back to doing this employment, but I feel, it's just the necessary thing to do. But this lesson is so important to me that I really need to refocus, and I just believe that opportunity may open the door in the future. But I have to be wise about it. And I really want to thank you for sharing with us the intellectual virtue. But I do got to shut it down for our next class. I want to thank you once again.
Don't forget, tomorrow night. Right, tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon.
5 p.m. Israel, yes. That's 7 a.m. for me. 7 a.m. for me, our 27th. It's about
time you have to get up early to do something. Come on, I'm up at 3:30 in the morning twice a week. You lazy bum.
Let's just pray I get some sleep tonight. I mean, we want everything to be so successful. Some of us do a lot of work behind the scenes.
There is a God-given promise that, yes, I'm going to be there tomorrow. Speaking about Noah, but I've been guaranteed only 20 minutes, if that.
15.
If not, then anyone who comes, their computers will sizzle and you all die. So just realize we are going to cut out, or I'm going to get cut out right in the middle. Doesn't matter. For 15, 20 minutes, going to have hopefully something interesting to speak about the flood. Something I think a little more esoteric, I think. About the flood, etc. That is, hopefully will shed light a little bit on that.
Awesome. I look forward to it, Rabbi. So till the next time we're back with Pirkei Avos, we got some exciting stuff coming. 27th Hespan celebration tomorrow. Hope you can all join us. We've got Beyond the Seven coming up here in about 25 minutes. So I got to check out. Folks, till our next class, have a wonderful, wonderful day.